Hello, beautiful. Satsang time. Ego stories. So, when I start to notice other people's ego stories, it is time for some self evaluation. So, that's what I've been doing this morning because I noticed myself looking around and going, hello. So, I thought we talk about it today. I will show you mine if you show me yours. I'll just show you mine. You don't have to show me yours. But you might be inspired to after our chat today. So let me talk a little bit about what I mean by ego stories. Ego stories, ego identities. An ego story can be helpful or can not be helpful. I'm talking about the not helpful ego stories. It's the stories we tell ourselves to try and keep ourselves out of our uncomfortable emotional experiences, generally. A helpful ego story would be something that helps you feel confident or protected or safe. And you know the difference. You can feel the difference. One is more expansive and one is very, very contracting and sort of like hiding. You know, our ego gets a bad rap, but the ego absolutely serves a purpose in our human experience. And without your ego, you wouldn't be getting up and getting out of bed. You wouldn't be following your heart. You wouldn't be helping others. You wouldn't be setting boundaries. There's a lot of stuff that you would be not be doing. You'd be sort of, a slug in bed. Our ego drives us. It drives our human experience. But it's unruly and it needs to be managed by our higher expression. Okay? And this is an ongoing practice. I say this probably every video. I remind you, it's a practice. It's a practice. It's a practice. And the reason I remind you of that is because we're here for the human experience and none of us are going to get it perfect. And there's nothing wrong with that. We're not here for perfection. We're here for experience, experience, experience. Okay? So I'm really talking about the unhelpful ego stories that maybe are not obvious to us. Maybe they are obvious. Maybe you know exactly what they are. Or maybe you're kind of doing a little bit of reflection, or we'll do a little more reflection after our time together and go, oh, okay, there's an ego story. An ego identity is a little bit different. It's an ego story, but it's something that you like a costume you wear, something you live in. So an ego identity might be, I am a mother, or one of my big ego identities for a long time is I'm a solo mother. Like I'm doing it on my own. And even if you don't really like that identity, it's an ego identity. It feels familiar, it feels safe, it feels, it might be, I'm a psychic medium. That's my identity. When you mistake the core of who you are for the role you play, that's an ego identity. And as humans, you don't really escape the ego identity. It's sort of, what you tear apart one and another one sort of shows up in its place. But it feels to me like these ego identities get closer and closer and closer to living in your source truth as you expand. And the spiritual journey is one of constant expansion. So you're going to be stripping away your ego identities and your ego stories as you become aware of them, and they will evolve and expand and expand and expand until eventually we live more fully, more of the time in our authentic experience, in our truth, in our heart, aligned with our God self, aligned with source energy. That's the practice that I think we can all agree we jump on and we work towards. So back to ego stories. My reflection this morning, I want to talk to you about sort of like the coming to see our ego stories. It can be really hard for us to look at our ego stories because we take it personally. There's a lot of shame, especially in the spiritual world. There's a lot of shame around ego. People like to use the ego as a club to beat each other with, and that's not what we're here to do. We're not here to beat ourselves up either. The way to seeing an ego story, to understanding that you have an ego story running, is through compassion, is not taking it personally, not taking it too seriously, remembering that all of us have it. All of us have gunk. All of us have stuff that is just our ego is churning. And sometimes our ego gets unruly, and sometimes we have it in check, and it drives us forward in a really positive way. For me, I started to notice some squiggliness in my ego. And the reason that one of the reasons our ego comes to the surface full bore is because we're getting ready to shed the story, to shed the identity, to expand into the next most authentic version of yourself. This is something that I've been seeing in myself and I've been seeing in other people recently, is like a lot of churning, and that expansion is really uncomfortable. And when we get into that expansion, when we're expanding out of our energetic comfort zone, the ego shows up and goes, "Rah! This is not safe," and tries to save us from moving into a space the ego is not familiar with, and thus does not know how to protect us, right? So this is where we have to be like, okay, ego, God love you. I'll put you in the back seat. Strap you in. I'm going to drive for a while, and we're just going to keep moving through this. But, some of the ego stories, the ego stories that come up, again, I want you to really be kind to yourself and understand that it's okay. It's uncomfortable, but it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not worse or lower than any other human on the planet because you have an ego story coming up. One of the ego stories I identified today was, I don't really like to be questioned. It's weird because I encourage it among my students and my clients. Like, I want their input and I want discussion. But when somebody out and out just like throws down with me and is like, "You're wrong," and da 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 da, I feel a little prickly. And most of the time, I just kind of move that aside and I continue to do the expansive work of like discussion and questioning and opening, But there was a time in my life where being perceived as wrong was debilitating for me. It would throw me off kilter for days. It wasn't that long ago. So there's been improvement there. But as I was doing the inner sort of evaluation this morning in my meditation, and that came up, I don't really like to be questioned. I posted something on my Facebook page, something to the effect of, "What do you think?" I asked the question, "What do you think? Do you think that anything is meant to be, or is it all free will?" And you know what? As answers kept coming in and people had their opinions, as it butted up against my experience, I could feel the pangs. I could feel, and there was this little piece of my ego that was like, I can't be wrong. If I'm wrong, everything comes crashing down. So the ego is very like dogmatic, fatalistic, black and white, this or that, yes or no. Spirit creation is big enough for all of it. It's not either or, it's and I know this, but my ego, because it's throwing a little bitch fit right now and poking its head up because I'm going through an expansion, as I'm sure you are as well. If you're watching this video, your energy is attracted to my energy and you're feeling that. So the ego is starting to come up and be more unruly than it usually is, or it's kind of getting my attention. Why? First and foremost, the ego is looking for love. It's all about unconditional love. You have to give that to yourself. The moment you turn in and you go to your inner core, you go to that place of ego pain, where that unhelpful ego story is vying for your attention, and you give it some love and some compassion, and you go, I get it. It's okay. You're allowed to feel this. You can thank your ego for showing up to do its level best to try and protect you from the next big poof, and it's going to immediately calm down. And then you're going to be able to see so much more clearly where that story is coming from, how that story has served you, and how you can feel your way through it, take the story out, feel your way through the experience, the pain, the fear, whatever is coming up for you, and release it. And then the next level of expansion is available for you to fully step into. And you might have more than one ego story running. Just be conscious of it. Feel into it. See how it shows up for you. Love yourself through it. Have some compassion for yourself, and let yourself be free. I love you like crazy.